Hello friends. So far, our analysis of economic integration, we basically explore the types of integration, the static and dynamic effects of integration, popularly called the theory of customs union, as well as the dynamic benefit associated with economic integration. Today, we are extending our analysis to incorporate some of the regional economic integration scheme, and we are starting with perhaps one of the most popular integration scheme in the world, namely the European Union (EU). Welcome to this session. Largest and perhaps the best known economic integration scheme in the world, or what we call the regional economic integration, is the European Union (EU). In this session, we will be providing a historical overview of the development of the European Union, the objectives of the European Union, and most importantly, the effects that it has created to global economy and the member countries of European Union in particular. So let us start with how essentially the European Union in fact evolved. All started with the Treaty of Paris in the year 1951 by the 6 countries of Europe. In this Treaty of Paris, these 6 countries, which are these 6 countries? West Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg. These 6 countries, in fact, we have a situation in which 6 countries of Europe formed what is known as the European Coal and Steel Community. We call it as European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC. Essentially, the formation of European Coal and Steel Community was liberalization of inter-community trade, that is between these 6 countries trade with respect to the coal, steel as well as iron ore, to reduce the tariff as well as to eliminate any kind of non-tariff barriers with respect to the inter-community trade, that is between these 6 countries, with inter-community trade with respect to the steel, coal as well as iron ore. And this is in fact perhaps the first step towards the formation of very larger unit of economic cooperation, which we call as the European Union. So 6 countries formed European Coal and Steel Community in the Treaty of Paris in the year of 1951. So these 6 countries in fact extended their cooperation by signing 2 treaties of Rome in the year 1957. There are 2 treaties. Many times we call it as Treaty of Rome. Still, we have 2 treaties in the Rome. One treaty formed what is known as European Economic Community, and the other treaty formed what is known as Euratom, which is European Atomic Energy Commission. So, the 6 countries, West Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg extended their economic integration scheme by signing 2 treaties of Rome in the year 1957. 2 separate treaties. We call it as Treaties of Rome. And these 2 treaties in fact established 2 other institutions. One, European Economic Community, the other is Euratom, European Atomic Energy Commission. So in this Treaty of Rome, and in fact with the Treaty of Rome, they established what is known as the European Community. In fact, later this European Community became the European Union. So this is perhaps the starting point. In the year 1992, a Maastricht Treaty was signed among 12 member countries or 12 countries of Europe. In fact, in this meeting or in this Maastricht Treaty, they combined, or Madrid Treaty in fact merged three separate treaties which was earlier formed. In fact, we have three separate treaties. One was European Coal and Steel Community, the other one was European Economic Community, and the third one was Euratom. So three separate treaties were merged as one unified contract or one unified agreement, and in fact, Madrid Treaty culminated the way to European Union. And European Union, before that it was known as the European Community. So European Union, which started its operation from the 1993 onwards, is essentially a combination or a merging of three separate entities or three separate organizations or three separate agreements which were previously signed in the Treaty of Paris as well as Treaties of Rome. And the Treaty of Paris along with the Treaty of Rome basically constitute the constitution of European Union. So European Union consists of three entities, namely one is European Coal and Steel Community, the other is the European Economic Community EEC, and the third one is Euratom, which is European Atomic Energy Commission. And European Union in fact combines these three or merge these three separate entities to form first European Community, and later from 1993 onwards the European Community renamed itself as European Union. So this is how the European Union basically emerged into the picture of world trading system or global financial system, and it plays a very crucial and significant role. Now, let us explore some more details associated with the European Union, starting with the objectives of the European Union. And what are the objectives of European Union? The basic objectives, as the Constitution of European Union itself says, is to confer citizenship to all nationals of the member countries. The Madrid Treaty was signed by the 12 countries. Later, from 1992 onwards, from 1993, we have the European Union because it renamed the European Community as European Union. It has expanded its size, and as of now, we are talking about these last days of October 2020. We have 27 member countries of European Union. So European Union consists of 27 member countries. In fact, we had 28 countries. As you may be well aware, that United Kingdom withdrew itself from the membership with the Brexit mandate. They withdrew itself from January 1st, 2020 onwards. They left the European Union. So we have 28 minus 21. We have 27 member countries of European Union. And the headquarters is Brussels. Brussels is the capital of Belgium. So headquarters is Brussels. The headquarters of European Union is Brussels. And we have 27 member countries. And the broad objective, we are talking about the objectives of European Union. The broad objective of European Union is to provide citizenship to all nationals of the member countries. And it in fact envisages a situation in which the countries or the member states of the member countries of European Union must have common commercial policy, common monetary policy, common fiscal policy, a common currency. We will come into that particular situation. Common currency, common monetary policy, and ultimately even a common defense system as well. That's a very broad objective of the European Union. To be specific, I can argue that the basic objective of European Union is the abolition of any kind of tariff and non-tariff barriers among member countries. That is, there should not be, the European Union in fact envisages a situation, in fact it had already achieved that particular objective. It envisages a situation there should not be any tariff among the member countries of European Union. And they must have and they should have a common external tariff with the member countries of the rest of the world. There should not be any restriction placed on the movement of productive factors of production, namely capital and labor. It objectives are again to have a common commercial policy and also a common policy with respect to the agriculture and transport. So these are the objectives of European Union. So what are the objectives? There should not be any internal tariff among the member countries of European Union. The external tariff could be common. The external tariff with respect to the non-members could be common. There should not be any restriction on the movement of productive factors for production, namely capital and labor. There should be a common commercial policy for these member countries, and there should be a common policy with respect to agriculture and transport. These are the objectives of European Union. And over the years, with the activities of the European Union, right from the treaties of Rome, it has basically achieved most of these objectives. In fact, from 1968, in the year 1968, the European Union removed all internal tariff among the member countries and started imposing common external tariff. From 1970 onwards, they started removing restrictions. They started removing restrictions on the movement of capital and labor. And in fact, from 1993 onwards, there are no restrictions placed on the movement of capital and labor, productive factors among the member countries. And in fact, from 1993 onwards, the year in which the European Union in fact came into existence after renaming European Community into European Union, and at present there are no restrictions placed on the movement of productive factors. Broadly speaking, we can say that there are four freedoms associated with the European Union. Four freedoms. In fact, we can argue that the objectives of European Union can be explained in terms of four freedoms. Which are these four freedoms? One is free movement of commodities, goods, free movement of services, free movement of capital, and finally free movement of people, or what they call people, we can call it as labor. So these four freedoms are the basic objectives of European Union. Free movement of commodities across member countries, free movement of services, free movement of capital, productive capital, and free movement of people. Let us call it as free movement of labor as well. So these are the four freedoms which implies the objectives of European Union itself. And undertake the achievement, or to make sure that the European Union in fact passes or realize the objectives or the envisaged objectives that is put in the constitution itself of European Union, there are certain what we call supranational institutions of European Union. Supranational institution in the sense that these institutions have authority over the sovereignty of the member countries. We have 27 member countries, right? Over these 27 member countries, there are certain institutions which are above them. In fact, that goes beyond the sovereignty power. In fact, we can argue some of the institutions, for example, say there is what is known as the European Commission. European Commission, which is headquartered in the Brussels, which is the capital of the European Union itself. This European Commission is the executive body of European Union. In fact, all the activities, all the day-to-day executive activities of the European Union is done by this executive body called European Commission, which is the appellate authority of the European Union. And we have European Council of Ministers, which each member represents each country. We have European Parliament, and this European Parliament in fact selected or elected as the voters of the member countries. We have European Court of Justice that in fact supervises that every agreement, every decision taken by European Commission as well as European Council of Ministers adhere to the principles of the European Constitution of the European Union. So we have certain cross-national institutions or supranational institutions like European Commission, the European Parliament, the European Council of Ministers, and the European Court of Justice. Before I explain the effects of European Union, and one significant aspect associated with European Union is that the introduction of a common currency in the year 1999. In the year 1999, as many of our friends may be aware, in the year 1999, the euro as a common currency was introduced. As a common currency, but it was only accepted by 19 member countries. That is, 19 member countries of European Union. How many member countries we have? 27 member countries, out of which 19 member countries started using euro by replacing their domestic currency. And from 1999 onwards, and we call its development as European Monetary Union, EMU, or sometimes it's also called the Eurozone. In 1999, euro as a common currency for 19 member countries of European Union came into existence. And we called its development as the European Monetary Union, and these 19 countries are called the Eurozone as well. Once this new currency called euro was introduced, there was again, in the year 1998, a European Central Bank was established. Headquarters is in Frankfurt, Germany. So headquarters in the German city of Frankfurt. European Central Bank basically looks into matters of these 19 member countries, because they in fact form the European Monetary Union. So we have another institution, another separate institution like European Commission, European Parliament, European Council of Ministers, European Court of Justice. Now we have the European Central Bank as well, which is headquarters in Frankfurt city of Germany. So that's are the basic operation or the framework of the European Union. Now let us explore finally the case of what the effect of the European Union in the global economy in general, and the economies of these countries, the member countries, 27 member countries in particular. And the most important aspect that there has been a sharp increase in the intra-EU trade. What are the effects? Perhaps the most important effect is that intra-EU trade has, it is empirical studies shows that it has almost doubled. In fact, the static benefit of trade creation as a result of European Union is that it increased the GDP of member countries up to 1 to 2%. The dynamic benefits are much larger. That means without economic integration, the trade between these among the member countries of European Union might be half of what is at present now. So the more than double, and most of the trade are intra-industry trade. So trade among the European Union has increased, and it has increased, or it has in fact went up with more than 100% increase was there. In fact, there has been an expansion in the trade between European Union countries as well as the non-member countries, especially with that of the NAFTA countries. Essentially as a result of there was increased demand for raw materials from the expanding European Union countries. So import of raw material and capital from the non-member countries has increased, and over the years the European Union has reduced the average level of tariff with non-member countries. And mostly as a result of the discussion under the GATT, we already saw the session on GATT and WTO. We have 2 rounds of the Tokyo round, the Kennedy round. As a result of the discussion and deliberation in the Kennedy as well as the Tokyo round, the European Union has reduced the average level of tariff with respect to the non-member countries. So there was not only increase in the trade among the member countries, what we call the intra-EU trade, there was also increase in the trade with respect to the non-member countries. And it can also be observed that there has been a trade diversion. Especially in the case of agricultural commodities. In fact, United States of America, in fact, has once complained that the trade diversion is taking place from US to the non-member or the member countries of European Union, because earlier, before forming the European community as well as European Union, most of these countries imported many agriculture related commodities from US. Once they formed the European Union, in fact they diverted trade from US to the member countries of European Union. That's the other case. So But we can argue that perhaps the most important effect goes beyond economics. We're talking about only economics, right? It's more of a political nature because this has become a unified entity. European Union got in fact more power because these countries are rapidly developed countries. In fact, once they form as a common unit, it can exert major influence in not only in global economics but global politics as well. But to sum up, it should be argued that the future implication of European Union goes, as we said, it goes much beyond economic. It's more of politics, because the ultimate objective of European Union is to create a common monetary system in which all these countries should have a common currency. They already had 19 member countries already do have the euro. Goes beyond that, and every country must have a common currency, a European monetary union. And in fact, there are issues with respect to the free movement of labor and capital. There are cultural issues, there are social issues associated with the free movement of people and capital across the European Union countries, even though most of these countries are the same level of development. So that's all as far as the European Union is concerned. So we saw perhaps the most popular and the largest trading bloc in the world. As a unit, it's the largest trading bloc, and in fact, because this is most comprehensive. We have other systems like NAFTA, for example, the South Asian Preferential Trading Agreement, for example, but all these other regional economic integrations are not as comprehensive or not as systematic as the working of the European Union. Hope that these sessions are useful to you. Can always log into our Telegram group in the name of our channel for continued discussion. In the next segment, for example, we will shift our focus from the Europe to North America by looking at the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. That will be explored in the next session. Hope that this session is useful to you. So until we meet next time, stay safe, happy learning. Thank you.